All right, welcome to today's episode of Just Make Art Podcast. My name is Nathan Terborg. I'm here with my co-host, Nathan Clark. How are you, Ty?
That's me.
That's definitely you. This is going to be a little bit of, we're going to have some fun today. Unlike our other episodes where we're super serious.
Yeah, so serious.
We were just, so after our last episode where we discussed Cameron Crowe's book, is it Uncool?
Yeah, The Uncool.
The Uncool, which was heavily focused on the impact of music in his life and his family's life. After we got done recording that, we spent another 45 minutes talking music.
We did.
And I was just thinking, and we were discussing what's our next episode going to be about, which, just to give you guys a peek behind the curtain, that's pretty much how we roll. What should we talk about next? We've got a long list of
Even though we have a long list of things on our Google Doc, we end up going, well, what about, I just saw this video. What about this? Yeah,
for sure. And to be brutally honest, a lot of the things on our long-term list require a lot of homework. And this one does not. So we're going to talk about the impact that music has had just on our lives and continues to have in our studio practice today.
Yeah, this is, this is about studio tunes and music that's kind of inspired us and kind of moved us along, because you know me with music, like this could be a 100,000 hour episode if we were just covering all kinds of things. I've always kind of labeled myself as a self-proclaimed music historian or collector in a way, self-proclaimed, because it annoys the hell out of some people sometimes.
You're an uber nerd when it comes to music. I mean, I think I'm probably in the 95th percentile. You're in the 99th percentile when it comes to
I have reined it in for this episode as much as I can, but the last few days I have been scouring things and putting ones that are more important rather than just the plethora of things, with a nice Three Amigos quote there after I watched the Martin Short documentary last night, which is absolutely fabulous, by the way.
Is it? It's in our queue.
It is one of the most beautiful love stories of a marriage, of a father, but also of a group of friends. Legendary group of friends.
Yeah.
Right. Like it is. So I highly suggest that for anybody, even if you're not a Martin Short fan, like it just, there were moments that you're like, this doesn't exist like this anymore, does it? It's just beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. I'm excited to watch that. So listen, if you listen to this podcast for art and only art, just probably skip to the next episode. This is going to be mostly music related. Ty and I just telling stories. But if you want to hang around, here we go. Where do you want to jump in, Ty?
I mean, let's jump in early. Let's go back to being kids. I think of, music has so many different factors, right, that are kind of involved in it. You've got the cool factor. You've got the underground factor. You've got the pop top 40 factor, right? You've got all these things. You've got what your parents listened to or your grandparents that you may have liked or not liked. But that does kind of shape an early road. And I want to go back to like that kind of cool factor, thing when you're kind of that older sibling of a friend or a friend's dad who was like at Woodstock, and had the record collection type thing. And I remember going back to my buddy Josh Pock in 4th and 5th grade. God rest his soul. We lost Josh, I think maybe 9 or 10 years ago to brain cancer. Just a wonderful soul. But his brother Jesse was probably 4 or 5 years older than us. So he was in high school, but he was that goth industrial kid that you didn't know many back then when you were in 4th or 5th grade, right? So Jesse had the safety pins, 40 of them all the way up his pants, pegged with Doc Martens, and always wore black and had dark hair and wore eyeliner and painted his fingernails. Well, Jesse's music collection, I couldn't tell you who any of these bands were at that time.
Wow.
But we would sit in our room, Josh and I, we'd go in and sneak his tapes. And we'd bring him into Josh's room and we'd sit there. And Josh was one of the first entrepreneurs I'd ever met, because he was the guy that went to Sam's Club and bought blow pops in the buckets, and then he'd sell them at school for $0.25.
Yeah.
Right. And make money. But what we do is we take all of Jesse's tapes, from The Cure to Skinny Puppy. I mean, all these Susie and the Banshees, and we would record them because Josh had the dual cassette thing. So we recorded them, but his dad had a business. So we'd go up to his dad's business and we'd photocopy the cassette liners. And that's how we started our tape collections from Jesse Pock stuff. So was that
in color? Did you photocopy them in color?
No, they were black and white. I don't even know if color photocopies were like You had to be big. You had to be like
Yeah,
IBM or
that's true.
somebody to have those
That's
back
true.
then. This
Yeah,
is like
sure.
1986,
Yeah.
you know? And so, but that kind of was like my artistic music beginning.
Hmm.
It wasn't the top 40 radio bands. These were like the fringe bands, you know, that post new wave, post punk, industrial goth stuff that, you know, just had this really cool like setting in of things. So then what that did is when I would go to Tower Records or these other record stores around, the listening stations became different. You could go grab a tape and go put it in and try it out, right? They had
Hmm.
those things that were just insane. But
Yeah.
what about you, like thinking back to that time?
I was the big brother in that dynamic, and my little brother. It's funny, we were on a camping trip a couple years ago, and he said something which was both incredibly complimentary and also a little bit hurtful. Which he said, I think the biggest impact that you had on me as a bigger brother was all the music that I got access to at a young age. You know, so I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's cool. That's actually not also cool, but it was. So I'm 5 years older than my brother,
Yeah.
and I got into shoplifting CDs.
Hmm.
I think probably about like as a sophomore. That was the first time I got arrested. And I got pretty good at it. Anyway, I had a lot of CDs. Is the point of that story. And so so when I was just really getting into music, we talked about this I think in the last episode a little bit around Pearl Jam, but it was a lot of the Seattle grunge scene. So
Yeah.
the Nirvana, Mother Love Bone, Temple of the Dog, Alice in Chains. Yeah, he always tells the story the first time I played Nine Inch Nails for him.
Mm.
And that actually he got really into it's sort of that industrial sort of
Yeah.
heavy metal vibe. I gave him his first Tool CD, so that was it's I
Yeah.
think about just the it was fun to be the big brother. I kind of wish I would have had one because that would have set me on that path a lot sooner than it was. I mean, he
Sure.
was hearing the stuff when he was like whatever 10, 11 years old,
Yeah.
that I just heard whatever a year or so previous. But that's the first thing that comes to mind. And then referencing back to our last episode with Cameron Crowe's story, how much of his experience with his sisters centered around the music that they
Yeah.
listened to, the music that his sister, his big sister, exposed him to. That beautiful story around the Beach Boys album that his
Yeah.
sister, who took her own life, had ordered, that it arrived after she passed away. I mean,
And it was
yeah.
that
So just
message. It was like for him, it was the, I think I'm trying to think of what he said. It was like the record came in the mail and I opened it up and I went to put it on and I was looking at the songs and I went, this is her suicide note, the message to me, because she didn't have a suicide note or leave anything
right.
behind.
Yeah.
And he went, this is her telling me.
Yeah.
This is her sharing, and I was just, but that's music. I think that's that beautiful thing. We have those friends or those siblings or things that were, the bond is even tighter because of the music.
Mm-hmm.
In junior high, I had friends like that, and we would sit, and most of them had older siblings. So we would just sit and listen to the siblings' music, and then that would form us, And then MTV,
Sure.
of course, for me was massive because it was all music videos, but we'd stay up late to watch the 120 minutes and, the rock shows and things that were catered to us. And I think back to even in high school, there was a record store called Nancy's Records in Auburn, and that's where we would get all of our music. And so my buddy Ben and I, when our friend Charity started working there, right, that was it at that point, because she could put on anything we wanted to hear for us to check out. And that was right at the start of grunge, right at those things. And my Discman, right, my Walkman was on my side in junior high. I had my Walkman with my tape on my side. Everywhere I went, it was on.
Yeah.
And I remember the headphones would always like break, so I'd have to tape together the cord so that it would kind of, where it was disjointed inside. And then with my Discman, I'd wear them out like crazy. You have to hit it because it'd be skipping and stop it from skipping, and you're always buying batteries. But it was like everywhere I went, Violent Femmes, Psychedelic Furs, New Order, Joy Division, all these, like those bands existed for me when I would make art. But then all of a sudden, grunge era came in, just swept in with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Mudhoney and the Melvins and, all the Smashing Pumpkins. All of a sudden you're like, wait, what? This fits, but it doesn't fit.
Right.
It's got a mix of all these other things. I'm celebrating it on video if you guys are watching. I had some fireworks going behind me.
Good for you. So it's funny. I got to speak on this real quick.
Yeah.
I'm thinking now about, you just connected something for me. So as a parent now of teenagers, well, our oldest is 20 now, but especially our youngest who's 17, the escape to the bedroom, which unfortunately now involves mostly doom scrolling on TikTok.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was the headphones. It was
Yeah.
just listening
Yep.
to music, because there was no device with a portal to
Yeah.
everything in the entire universe for us to just become completely enamored by. So yeah, just how many hours spent in the bedroom, headphones on, just staring at the
Angry,
ceiling.
sad, all, broke up with the girlfriend, or the girl won't pay attention to you. So you're listening to the Cure's pictures of you over and over and over and over. You know?
So Pearl Jam's Black, that
Mhm.
song is undergoing a renaissance. I mean,
Okay.
it's a phenomenal song, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen, there's so many reels about it. It's just one, it's like
Mm-mm.
become a thing. But anyway, I saw some live concert footage from, I think, this year, where the crowd is just whatever 60,000 people strong, just singing every single word. But
Mm.
that's one of those, like,
Yeah.
longing for somebody who doesn't hold you
Absolutely.
back. We had bunk beds. I shared a room with my little brother. I was on the top bunk, big bro, no big deal. But we had a kind of a built-in bookshelf in the wall next to my bed. So I had all these shelves where I could keep all my music and
Yeah.
my little journals, where I'd listen. You talked during the last episode, or maybe it was afterwards, but
Writing those
rewriting
lyrics.
lyrics,
Yep.
or writing poetry, or things like that. I also remember, before the advent of the compact disc, and before I even got my first few, cassette tapes, I would listen to my favorite radio station, and I got really good at, how you just make your own
Yeah.
mixtapes based
Oh
on,
yeah.
so you'd hear the first bar of a song you wanted to get, and you're like, boom, got it.
Yep.
Just like the excitement of, like, I now have that song to play whenever I want. It was so exciting, so fun.
Man, that you saying that, about disappearing to the bedroom, not to sound like a grumpy old man or anything in my 50s here, but it's like, man, the magic of going to Tower Records, the magic of going to the record store to buy the
Hmm.
music, to invest in something that, you washed 10 cars in order to go buy that CD or that tape. You
Yep.
mowed some lawns, like, to earn. But there was something about, I mean, for me, growing up in California, right, we had Tower Records everywhere. And
Yeah.
so walking into that, seeing that sign with the red letters, like, to me, that was going to Disneyland. I mean,
Yeah.
there was nothing more. And because it wasn't just about the music, it was about everybody else you saw in there.
Yeah.
Like, all the different styles. You had the skate kids, you had the punk kids, you had the mods, you had the goth kids, the industrial kids, you had just awkward kids, you had band kids, everybody was in there looking for their music,
Yeah.
and then when CDs came into play regularly for everybody, then listening stations started, where you could
Yes.
go in and they would have the specific albums. You could
Hmm.
listen to the whole thing. I would spend hours, if not days, listening to everything before I made my purchase. And then
Yeah.
something magic happened. Used CDs and
Mm.
used tapes. Everybody started buying back what people didn't want it and reselling
Right.
them. That's when it happened. That's when I just went gangbusters, because $3.99 for that used CD instead of
Yeah.
$9.99, I could buy 3 of them.
Let me ask you this, Ty.
Yeah.
How many CDs could your CD wallet hold that you had in your car?
How many of the CD wallets? So I had the big square ones that were about this big, that
Yeah.
held, I
So
think it was
four
4.
wide. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
they end up about this thick. So I
Right.
probably, I don't know, had 10, 12, 13 of those.
Hmm.
But those were just my favorite CDs.
Right.
All the other ones are still in the cases and stacks. I
And
still have them, by
tell
the
me,
way. They're
I
upstairs.
do too. I
Yeah.
do too. Tell me if this is true for you. So
Mhm.
it started off as being very meticulous around having the album artwork, the
Behind the
CD,
CD.
right? And they'd be organized by genre or by artist, and then over time you had 3 4 deep. You just had to kind of rifle. That's how it started, and how it turned out. But
Yeah,
that was the
that's when you couldn't afford a
yeah.
new case.
But back to your yeah, it was harder to steal the cases than it was the CDs themselves. The experience of investing in an album
Yeah.
is so, and this has been discussed, a lot by other people, but every time, I hear it kind of brought up, it's like, there's no investment anymore, and again, I wouldn't trade the access to, you share a band with me, I can listen to their entire catalog that moment.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Of course, like it's great. But the downside is that you're not invested. I mean, when you're talking about mowing lawns, so I mowed some lawns, my first job, I think I was in third grade. I rode my bike down to the local golf course and I said, hey, I want to find, one of my friends was, he had a job, quote unquote. He was an independent contractor. We were not employees, but it was a quarter for every good condition, decent golf ball that we could find. So I would go trudging through basically the entire perimeter of this golf course, through the ditches, and just, pull golf balls out. So a CD was roughly, probably 50 or 55 golf balls that I had to find, which was probably about 4 hours of work, because you'd find some that were just trash and that they weren't going to buy them back from me. But it was an investment. That's the point. It was something that was like, that was real dirty ass trudging through the mud, coming home needing 2 showers just to be able to come to the dinner table of work. So you better believe I was going to listen to that thing 40 times through, front to back, before I ever set it aside and decided this really isn't for me. So the decision on the front end was significant, right? Like it was like, okay, I got enough for 2 CDs today. What's it going to be? And this goes back, so you're talking about the experience of going into the music store. This is where the album art, the music videos. So we were, I'm not going to say we were poor, but we couldn't afford cable. Let's just put it that way. So my only MTV consumption was when I was over at friends' houses. But the image of a band presenting themselves in terms of their music videos, but also the album artwork, was huge as well. Like what's going to get your attention to even pull you in to consider, hey, should I check this one out? Yeah, good times.
Talking about record stores and things, fast forward a little bit here. I applied to Tower Records for a job. I don't know how many times. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I never got it. Well, number one, it's probably the most competitive place to work back in the late 80s, early 90s for anybody that liked music, right? Everybody's applying. But I remember in college, my first few years in Stockton, California, Tower Records is where I spent my time. If I wasn't on the basketball court, because I played college basketball, or in art classrooms, I was at Tower Records. Like those were my 3 go-tos. And they knew me because I was buying CDs. I was at the magazine rack reading all the magazines with my journal, making notes on bands I need to check out. Because that's how I found out. I wasn't on the internet then. Nobody was. The World Wide Web wasn't like something you just went and checked stuff out. So it was magazines. It was MTV. It was hearing the artists talk about artists they like, right? It was going to a show and seeing an opening band that might be something later, or they weren't, but you bought the album anyways because you enjoyed them. And I remember, I'd walk in with my Discman, like I said, and, I'd change my clothes. I'd fill out an application. Or, hey, did you guys see my application yet? No, I think we lost. You'd fill out another one. But man, I wanted that freaking job at Tower Records so bad. It was a badge of honor.
Did you ever get in?
Never did.
Wow.
I probably applied majority of college time at Tower Records. Never got in. Maybe I was too tall.
It's funny you talk about how you would dress different. Now I'm thinking back to high school and how I played all the sports, but I also was art club, theater, choir boy. As much as I cared about sports, growing up, choir was the only thing that I was all state in. Funny enough. Yeah. So in school, I don't know about you, but I was one of those. I didn't fully belong to any one sort of core clique or group, but I migrated between a bunch of different ones. So with the jocks, I was always the one that was, looked a lot more, dressed a lot more alternative, or, whatever, whatever it might be, because that was the crew that I was going to concerts with, not the guys from the football team or the basketball team, so it's funny.
Yeah. I think, let's see, those first years in college that were not good personally for me, Scott Weiland was like the guy who I wanted to look like more than anything. Stone Temple Pilots lead singer. So I had pink hair, I had blonde, I had bleached hair, I had my cut off fur jacket, with cut off sleeves, flannels, Doc Martens. And the guys on my team, my first year there, I was one of 3 white guys on the team. And what was popular at the time, Real World had just started on MTV.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Puck, my nickname was Puck. He
Mm-hmm.
was the alternative guy on the Real World, but all of my friends and that's the only touch of reality of somebody who was alternative in look
Right.
could be for them. So they either called me Puck or Green Day because Green Day Dookie was really big at the time. So, but yeah, that was my goal, was to look like Scott Weiland as much as possible.
One of the most charismatic frontmen ever. I mean, just oozed rock star.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he couldn't escape the grasps of addiction.
So this is a wild story. I don't think I've ever told you this, even off air. So when he passed away, this would have been maybe like 2016, 2017, maybe. So he was in Minneapolis for a concert, and it came up on my whatever. I saw it online, and I was like, oh man. So just bummed one of your rock heroes dies, especially that way. I mean, being in recovery myself, it always just hits me even harder because I've a lot of personal friends that I've known through recovery that have lost their life to overdose. And so when somebody who you admire from a distance, it's just like, God, what else could they have done? And especially within the context of his career, I mean, he made a fraction of the music that he would have otherwise, because it completely blew up their ability to tour and to make new music. So I'm looking at the photograph he overdosed in his tour bus, and I look at the photograph, and I see what's in the background, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I walk to the window in my office, and I look out in the parking lot, and his tour bus was parked in the parking lot of where I was officing at the time. And so I know I could walk you there right now. I know the exact spot. That's where, so when Leo was a pup, we'd go on our little, walks around the building and stuff, because he'd always be at work with me. And I mean, that was wild, so I walked out there and just sat, and of course they had it all roped off because they weren't sure what the circumstances of his death were.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Just wild. I was just, anyway.
Man. Yeah. It's the memories, the places that it takes you back, that's the power of music. I know Cameron talked about that in the book a little bit, how it's happy, sad, and all these different emotions, but the perfect song takes you exactly back to the place, to the time, to the moment, to the people, to the smell, all of those things. And I think that's what I treasure so much. Talked about my Tower Records love. Well, in college, later on in college, my roommate, my buddy Micah, who you've met, who I played basketball with, we went to Tower Records Hollywood probably every weekend in LA, because they had albums and things that nobody else had. It was kind of first releases, indie things would show up there. And so we would go up and see shows in Hollywood, but Tower Records on our way home, because they were open till I think 2 a.m. So everybody was there. So you may see somebody too.
Right.
You may see somebody random that's there hanging out. And I was on a full basketball scholarship and an art school, but I took out loans as an idiot to buy music with. So I didn't have to pay for my school or my living or any of that stuff, but I took out loans anyway and Pell Grants and all that stuff, just literally so I could buy music. And I paid for that with interest for years upon years when I didn't need to. But man, I had a damn good record collection.
Yeah. Speaking on paying for things for years, how many times did you sign up for the CD clubs?
I did that 3 times before I got beat to a pulp.
I had collections after me at one point because I signed up with different phone numbers and different names to get
my
to
parents after me for
12 CDs for a penny.
Yeah. And then $200 later. Yeah. Columbia. Gosh.
You're talking about happy, sad, and just thinking about STP, Sour Girl from their album number 5, which I think is the last studio album that they recorded together. That is one for me that every time I play that, I got to be, and we'll get into this in a little bit here, probably if we can get past our is this still the intro? We're
still the intro.
This might be the episode.
Yeah.
There's certain songs that just hit me so hard emotionally. I have to be intentional about when I listen to them, especially 100%. If it's in the studio. Yeah.
100%.
So let's wrap up part 1. We'll come back to that. So part 1. So just the music role that music has played in our lives. So now I'm in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing football. My roommate, Ted Manderfeld, shout out Ted. He was majoring in music. He's a phenomenal like concert pianist. In fact, that's how he makes his living. He's half of a dueling pianos duo that tours the country, and it's awesome. But so we we go in there to the radio station, and you see a flyer on campus like, hey, want to be a radio DJ, have a show, come by this meeting. And so Ted and I show up, and they knew that we were on the football team, and they were like, I mean, just the initial look, right? Because like everybody who was who they looked like they belonged in a radio station.
Right.
And here a couple of dumb jocks show up. They're like, yeah, I think we're all full. So we got denied the first year, and we just kept after it. So finally in our sophomore year, we got a chance to do it. And now that I'm thinking about it, it was so much fun because so Cameron Crowe talking about all the demos that radio station would get. We got a ton of different demos. And that's how I got exposed to a bunch of sort of more fringe bands that I wouldn't probably have been exposed to otherwise. So one of my more obscure bands that I just love is Luna. Have you ever heard of Luna?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So when the Days of Our Nights came out, that was one that I think I might have just stole that one. I don't know if that was available but it was, again, like it was one, nobody missed it. But so Ted and I had this radio show, and we would record every single episode. And so we would take the cassette tape back to our room, and we'd like listen back. We were both very much in love with the sound of our own voices.
Yeah. Did you guys have a name for your show?
We did.
Is it the Music Jocks?
Or no, I mean, so we had a little bit different tastes, but the theme was
offense and defense.
There was going to be, I was a defensive end. I'm trying to remember what position Ted played. I think he was a defensive back or a linebacker. Anyway, we were known to be the ones that would talk way too much. We were both very much in love with the sound of our own voices.
Yeah.
Fast
Just
forward
play
to
some
today.
Music. Just play some music, man.
Talk on a mic on a Sunday morning for fun. But it was so fun. I remember we were so excited about it. I remember one time I was hanging out with this girl that I was really, really enamored by. And we were just hanging out in her dorm room, and thinking I'm going to be smooth and that this is going to be a flex. I'm like, hey, you want to listen to our last show? She's like, sure. So I played it. So I played a tape of our show, just being completely unaware. I finally, after about half an hour, realized she was just like, what are we doing? That might have been the last time that we hung out. But anyway, was a big fan of but it really expanded my music collection. It totally exposed me to bands that I wouldn't have heard of otherwise, for sure.
I am so jealous that you had that experience, because I remember I was probably fourth, maybe fifth grade. I'm trying to think of when Pump Up the Volume came out with Christian Slater. One of my favorite films of all time. He's the underground pirate DJ. And ever since then, I wanted to be a DJ. Or once Gross Point Blank came out, I wanted to fall in love with a DJ who looked just like Minnie Driver. When I walked into the old, and the scene where he's driving past where she's the DJ of the radio station, when he comes back home and she's in there on the mic and he can see her through the window. I always had that dream of small town. There's the cute DJ that looks just like Minnie Driver. And, but hold
on. What's the other Cusack movie that
High Fidelity?
Jack Black, is it? There it is. Yeah,
High Fidelity.
I thought that's what you were referring to.
That's based on the Nick Hornby novel of the Record Store, which is one of my top 5 favorite books and films. Yeah,
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So then I get into when I really started partying, and when things got really, really out of control. So I got really into the rave scene. So that's what introduced me to electronic music. And so the closest I ever got to performing, and for those of you listening, I'm using air quotes here, but performing music. So I got really excited about it. I bought a couple of turntables, a mixer, and I started to spin records. And at this point, I had been kindly asked to leave the first college I was going to and move back to Minneapolis, and got really into sort of the rave scene. And so my DJ name was Jaffe Ryder. And if you get this literary reference, I will be blown away. But it's from a very well-known author, probably one of his better-known books as well, Jaffe Ryder. So Jaffe Ryder was a character from The Dharma Bums by Kerouac.
Never read Dharma Bums.
Oh my goodness. It's probably my favorite Kerouac book, actually. Being in college, that was just, so that was my DJ. I still have some flyers with Jaffe Ryder on it.
My brain now can only picture you in the rave scene as, and a lot of people are going to know this, the German Viking rave video from that's how I picture you in the rave scene. Shirt off, cut off shorts, moving the dude who shouldn't be there and getting him out of the way. One of the best videos ever. The German Viking
of all time.
Yeah.
No, I didn't look anything like the German Viking at that time. Nope.
Yeah.
Super strung out, super skinny. Yeah. I had my labret pierced right here. I had my tragus pierced on both sides. I had 3 earrings on each side. I had hair down to about here. You would not have recognized me. Quite the phase. So before we get into actually talking about music in the studio, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just want to. Yeah, well, no. Let's jump into like art, music, studio, like influential, and I've got a fun jumping off point that I can run into. So it's 1996. This is my first year in art school, because I transferred from a junior college to where I played basketball in LA, and I went home. And I was hanging out with my friend Charity, who worked at Nancy's Records back in the day. Mm-hmm. So I went up to her loft in Old Town Auburn, and we were hanging out. And she goes, "Hey, have you heard this soundtrack yet?" And this is something we always did. She and my best buddy Ben, we just spent hours upon hours listening to music. And she's like, "Hey, have you heard this album?" I'm like, "What is this?" And she's like, "Oh, it's a soundtrack for a movie that came out this year, and it's insane. I know you know the artist." And I was like, "Well, what's the artist's name?" And she said, "Basquiat." And I was like, "Actually, I've heard of him, but I don't really know anything about him." And it was a soundtrack for Julian Schnabel's film for Basquiat. And this soundtrack blew me away. It was I went back to school. I got the CD. I went back to art school. And this is what, when I was there, I couldn't stop listening to, because it had, a lot of Julian Schnabel's friends in there, but just songs like It's All Over Now, Baby Blue by Van Morrison, Hallelujah, covered by John Cale, which I think is the best cover next to Jeff Buckley's of Hallelujah, which is Leonard Cohen's song. But it had the Pogues, Tom Waits, Gavin Friday, Bowie. It was just insane. And then, oh gosh, what's the Public Image? And then there's a song by Brian Kelly called She Is Dancing, which is, like you said, that song of Stone Temple Pilots. It just hits you in a very deep way. Like, this album continues to have importance in my life throughout time, because Schnabel becomes my favorite artist at that period in time. I just thought he was a director back then, because like I said, this is 96. So the internet, I think, just came into the universities, the World Wide Web, around that time. And so what's up?
There's a book I meant to text you about this recently. There's a book I'm reading right now that you will absolutely love.
Okay.
It's not really art related at all, but it's called The 90s.
Okay.
By Chuck Klosterman.
Like
Chuck Klosterman?
I've read every one of his books except for that one, but he's
so you will love
an
this
idol
book.
of mine.
You will absolutely love this book.
If you guys haven't read Chuck Klosterman, start buying his books and reading them. Like, they're
amazing.
Fictional and nonfiction books are all phenomenal.
His writing style is incredible. Yeah. He's got a very unique voice, and it's just so. We won't do a podcast on it because there's very little art, but a lot of cultural references. But he talks a lot about the advent of the internet and the ripple effect that had. When it was first coming about. In the 90s.
This is
anyway.
With Basquiat and Schnabel, right? If I wasn't in New York, or if I wasn't going to major galleries or getting art news at that time, you would not have heard about these people unless somebody told you about them.
Right.
Right. It was all somebody told you. So that's when I switched from sculpture and ceramics to painting, like that album, because
interesting.
That's when I found Basquiat. So then I found his work. And then that switched everything. I literally went dumpster diving, because I then watched the film, and I was like, that's who I want to be.
Yeah.
And I would graffiti campus. I had my own Samo quotes all over campus. I started wearing jackets with paint on them, like suit jackets around, old suit. Like, I just switched from who I was to that, like, overnight. Yeah. And so, but then when I was in Pooch Cove with some of our artist friends for a residency a few years ago, we watched the Basquiat film. And it was such a fun experience because the bulb was dying on the projector. And so every probably 10 minutes it would cut out. And we'd have to restart it. So in that time, I would get up in front of the screen like I was at a film festival, and I would explain all the things that Schnabel's doing with the film and what he's trying to say with these scenes and how the music influenced it. So it was this really cool experience. But then, you know what we listened to the whole rest of the time? That soundtrack. Everybody had that soundtrack on and was listening to it in their studios painting. Then this morning, I get a message with that group on WhatsApp, and it's Gianna and Bonnie are at Gianna's studio in the Netherlands, in Haarlem, Netherlands, and they're painting together and they're listening to the Basquiat soundtrack. So it's like, right, the importance of some of those things that continues to create the deep moments and story throughout your life as an artist, to me, are priceless.
So when you say soundtrack, so a couple things on that.
Yeah.
Soundtracks were a phenomenal way to get introduced to
new music,
new bands,
Yeah.
right? That you know, because again, you buy that thing, you're listening to all those. You better believe, you know, and you're going to get exposed to, you know. So the first soundtrack that comes to, I'm sure you'll remember this one. It was the soundtrack for The Crow.
Oh, I have it on my list here. One of the best. Yep.
All right, I got it pulled up. So The Cure, Stone Temple Pilots, Nine Inch Nails, Dead Souls, one of my favorite Nine Inch Nails songs of many.
Yep.
Rage Against the Machine, Violent Femmes, Rollins Band, Helmet, Pantera, For Love Not Lisa, the Jesus and Mary Chain. I mean, yeah, just phenomenal soundtrack.
So my buddy
Did
Josh,
you want to do a whole soundtrack section?
Oh yeah, my buddy Josh was the guitar player for Love Not Lisa, by the way.
Oh really?
Yeah.
No kidding. Wow.
Which is pretty. I mean, Helmet, Milquetoast, like that album, Rollins Band. I mean, dude, it was insane.
This was a soundtrack that specifically introduced me to Rollins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you didn't grow up a punk kid, which
I didn't
on here, but I did. Like you wouldn't have known Black Flag and Rollins Band and those things. Moving on, but but that Cure Burn, that song. So that came out, and for my I had a senior film project in art school, and we used Burn as the opening for our film, which I'm still trying to find on VHS. I'm still trying to find it somewhere in my boxes.
That's a mega Cure song.
It Can't Rain All the Time. Tell me you didn't cry to that at some point in your life. The last song on the entire soundtrack.
For sure. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Were they going to remake that? And now we got to talk about Brandon Lee.
No,
let's skip. Death. All right, fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, soundtracks, you know, the Breakfast Club soundtrack was always a favorite of mine as a kid, that album. I think probably the soundtrack next to Basquiat that hit me the hardest was the Natural Born Killer soundtrack.
Oh.
That one was brilliant. I mean, and it introduced me to the Pakistani artist Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, who ended up doing a lot of stuff with Peter Gabriel around that time as well, who is one of my all-time favorites too. But that soundtrack is out of this world.
No, I've got to look at it. Oh, wow. Damn.
Yeah. Leonard Cohen.
Cowboy Junkies, L7.
Patti Smith. Yeah, I saw L7 was one of my favorite concerts I've ever seen.
All right, here's an underrated soundtrack.
Yes.
Do you remember the movie The Last Action Hero?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, that soundtrack slapped. AC/DC, Alice in Chains, Megadeth, Queensryche. I'm not a big metal guy, but
yeah,
Def Leppard, Anthrax, Aerosmith, another Alice in Chains, Cypress Hill. That Cypress Hill track, Cock the Hammer, so good.
Another great show.
Tesla. Anyway, all right, this concludes our soundtrack section.
Okay, I want to jump into a band that you and I both love and that influences our studio practice in a very big way for both of us. And we've talked about them a lot before, but I think this will be a good jumping off point to studio work. Okay. This was 1995. And one of my buddies, who was a little crazy, Chris, comes flying into our apartment late one night, Micah and I, and my buddy Ben. No, Ben wasn't there yet. It was Micah and I. And comes flying into our apartment late at night, like he would usually do. And I mean, it's probably like 1 a.m. or something. And he's just yelling, dude, just got back from Tower Records, Hollywood. And I just saw this band play and they freaking crushed. You know the song Creep from Pablo Honey? Yeah, that's the band Radiohead. They just released their new album, The Bends. You're going to flip. And he bought the album. So we sat up and listened to it. And now Radiohead was big, but not massive yet at all at this time.
Sure.
That was their first time ever playing at Tower Records in the U.S. I think they had toured a little bit in the U.S. with Pablo Honey, but it wasn't a major tour. It was like a few places. Everybody knew Creep, and that was about it. And we had the album. We listened to it in high school, but we really kind of skipped to Creep. And then Anyone Could Play Guitar. Those were kind of the two songs we would listen to, and then we kind of get to everybody else.
Yeah.
So at the same time, Chris goes, listen to this album, but you have to check out this other guy named Jeff Buckley. He goes, if you really want to get depressed and make good work, listen to this album, Grace. And at the time, I did not know the correlation between Jeff Buckley and Radiohead and the album The Bends and Jeff Buckley's Grace. So anyways, we would listen to those two albums in my studio on campus. I had an art studio that I was the only person that had an art studio in campus because we had bought a new warehouse building that we're converting into a different campus at the university. And they stored all the track and field equipment in the gym in there. Well, there was this whole empty chain fence linked indoors place where they kept all the track equipment. Well, I asked, hey, can I use that as my studio for my senior show? They said, yeah, and gave me 24-hour access. Yeah. My friend Chris's parents had the largest choral group in Southern California. And he kept all the concert speakers and all the equipment at his apartment. So we set them all up in my studio, these half-stack concert speakers, set up the stereo system, everything. And he would sit and play guitar and bass, and we would have the Bends on, and we would have Jeff Buckley Grace on while I would work on art for my senior show. It was...
Please tell me that the high jump mats were available to just...
I would sleep on them.
Yeah,
I would literally,
nothing better than a high jump mat.
We had the big Gatorade bottles that we would fill with urine because there wasn't a bathroom. So we'd fill those with urine, and some of that might have made it in paint to see what that would do as a medium. But I found this quote because you and I were talking about this recently I was telling you about the Bends and the influence of Jeff Buckley on that. So I did a little research. So this is from Thom Yorke, the lead singer of Radiohead. Jeff Buckley gave me the confidence to sing in falsetto. When we were recording Fake Plastic Trees, we went to see Jeff Buckley play live at the garage. He just had a Telecaster and a pint of Guinness, and it was just fucking amazing. Then we went back to the studio and we decided to try an acoustic version of Fake Plastic Trees. I sat down and played it in 3 takes and then burst into tears afterwards, and that's what we used for the record. But he said, if he wouldn't have seen Buckley play, it wouldn't have given him the confidence to use his falsetto voice.
And what would Radiohead be without Tom's falsetto?
I mean, think about when we're talking about influence. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's like, as an artist, you go see something and you come back home from the museum show or the gallery show and you're so inspired and you're like, they gave me permission to go do that. Yeah. Like, that's such a beautiful story. I'll send you a clip of him talking about it. I have a clip from YouTube as well, Tom.
I will watch it. I will watch it.
Radiohead, right at this point, started to become, for me, like a massive influence in making music. And it was everything about Radiohead's willingness to change, willingness to evolve, to try new things and not be afraid of these, because here we are. The Bends is everything. And then in 1997, Jesse Pierpoint, Jesse, if you're listening, I love you, buddy, walks into art class and goes, dude, the new Radiohead album came out. Let's put it on. Okay, computer. It was night and day from the Bends. It was so night and day. And we sat there and we listened to it in art class. We had it on while we were all working. And I remember just going, my jaw was dropped. It was just like, let's make some freaking art, dude. Let's go. It was just insane.
So again, being significantly younger than you, obviously I already listened to the Bends, but when that one was released, I want to say a sophomore in high school. And so I grew up in a small town. So the nearest mall was about a half hour away. And I think I bought 2 or 3 CDs that day, but I'm sitting in the back of our Dodge Grand Caravan, wood panels, 2 younger siblings in front of me. I'm in the far back, right? I'm kicking up sideways, putting up my feet, distancing myself as much as possible
from everybody,
from my family, put it in my Discman and listen to that, or most of it, on the drive home. And from the very first track, I was like, what is this? Yeah. And this is all I want to listen to the rest of my life. And to be fair, I mean, we've talked about Radiohead a bunch on these podcasts for the reasons that you just outlined, because we are such big fans of their willingness to continue to evolve and go completely different directions as they have continued to for the duration of their career. But that was one of probably my most impactful concert that I ever went to. So I went and saw them for the OK Computer concert
Jealous.
and even at that time, it was a pretty small little theater, maybe 3,000 people, something like that. But seeing that in person, shout out Eric Walker, my buddy, one of my only friends who was into them at the time. And boy, that was just, I mean, we drove home in silence. I was like, that was a life-changing moment. I knew it at the time that was like a life-changing, moment where you're like, wow, just absolutely. Yeah. I can't even put it into words, but I'm super grateful I got to see them during that time. And I'm happy to say that of the many bands that I've successfully gotten, my youngest daughter, she's the music nerd of our family, of our kids anyway. She loves Radiohead. So when it came out that they're likely going to be touring North America next year, we're like, we're going. Closest city, we're matter. We're going.
100%. I will be. Yeah. Maybe I'll join you.
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Would be. Well, I think sharing those experiences with friends and people is just incredible. And just the memories that holds, as we've talked about memory, I've mentioned my buddy Micah quite a few times because we've been music partners forever. And so there was a band when we were in college. He was my roommate. And so he had to deal with all the artsiness of me all the time. Like, hey, here's a video camera. I have a video camera for the month for a postmodern film class. Let's go to Hollywood and interview people. So I actually have a few of those tapes of us like interviewing people outside Maryland Manson concerts or outside the Viper Room in Hollywood and all these places, like, because we're trying to find our heroes. But I'm just like out there rolling. He's rolling with the camera and I'm just walking around talking to people and interviewing them and man on the street stuff. And my hair is like this tall. But there was a band that we found in LA that actually played at our school. They were friends with some friends of ours called the Autumns. Never blew up. Were never massive. They were big in LA in the scene for a while, but very lucid, atmospheric, kind of a bit of the later Cure with some of kind of Morrissey vocals, but really obscure in a way, but very emotional. And we went to every show in Hollywood where they played anywhere. And I would always sit in the back with my notebook and I would write poems and journal. And Andrew, the lead singer, I remember, he was always weeping through songs. And it was that at that time for me too, just, I need music with such heavy emotion. The pop song doesn't do it for me. I need the depth. I need the artistry wrapped up in it. I think that's why David Bowie is so huge for me, which I haven't talked about yet at all. But one of those, there's those obscure bands who never really make it past. Feelings that have such an impact. But the Autumns, they're on Spotify. I definitely suggest people listen to them. But that's probably the band outside of Radiohead. I can list hundreds that I listen to regularly, but the Autumns is one that, since I heard them, they have a part in my studio.
Who is your most listened to on Spotify? What's your number one artist on Spotify? I don't even need to look. I already know, but I wanted to ask you first.
So many. It's probably Bowie or Pearl Jam.
Anyway, my Wrapped age last year was 86 years old. And that is almost entirely because I've been listening to a lot more jazz the last couple of years than I ever had before. So
I love it.
Miles Davis is my number one most listened to jazz artist anyway. But my number one artist every year for the last probably 10 years has been The National.
Oh yeah, I could have picked that for you.
National hat today. That The National as an adult, right? So that we're talking about some bands that really impacted us in those formative years, right? Like, and a lot of people our age, if we're being honest, not whatever, but most people kind of get locked into the genre or era of music when they're coming of age, when we are coming of age ourselves, right? Yeah. So adolescence, teens, early 20s. But The National is a band that I am just... Yeah. I've seen him, I don't know, probably 10 times now, flown to Chicago to see him, flown to see him at Red Rocks. Like that's absolutely my number one because Matt's lyrics, he writes.
One of my favorite writers. Yeah.
So good. And yeah, I could talk about the National for an entire podcast, but it'd be probably pretty boring to all but maybe 0.2% of our listeners. Okay, we're gonna do we're gonna do a section on, I'm gonna call it guilty pleasures. I mean, we're both at a point where we don't feel any guilt for the things that we love at
No,
this point,
not at all.
but things that nothing we've probably talked about at this point would really surprise anybody that knows us even a little bit. But I'm gonna end up sharing some that will definitely.
What are your top 10?
Apparently, my number one most listened to song is Elastic Heart by Sia.
You know, that's a fantastic song.
It's an awesome song.
I'm a massive Sia fan.
Sia is phenomenal.
She is phenomenal.
And then we get into Your Mind Is Not Your Friend by The National.
Yeah.
Here's a band that I came across a couple of years ago, and they're now probably top 2 or 3. They were like I think my number 2 listened to band last year, Nation of Language.
Mm-hmm.
Have I gotten you on them yet?
The Nation of Language. Yeah. Oh, I've loved them for years. They're so good.
Of course you have. Yeah. I've been on them for a while.
So,
of course.
you know, Sia. Did you ever listen to 07?
Yeah.
You know, that's
of course.
Sia.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that because they only know new Sia, but don't know just the indie influence that she's had for years.
was another one that came out during my college DJ days that I helped myself to. Yeah. All right. So what are yours?
Oh, you want mine? Wait, did you give me all 10? You said Sia.
No. Okay, so then we get into Leaving New York by REM, one of my all-time. That's a top 10. Mm-hmm. Top 10. I listen to a lot of REM. I love REM. Let's see, Wolf Like Me by TV on the Radio.
One of my favorite bands.
That's one of my let's get the juices flowing and get fired up. I Need My Girl by The National. Then we get into.
Are you skipping some here because you're afraid to share them?
Well, I'm just because it's not. This can't be right. I think this is so part of it. I am scrolling through. You're absolutely right. You absolutely called me out on that.
Well, if you have kids that have ever used your Spotify, it can get clouded.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. So this is sort of an eclectic. My wife loves the 80s, so she's all about the 80s music. Okay, so one of mine though is A Million Reasons by Lady Gaga.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic song. Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
So. I mean, there's some songs that come on that when they come on, my whole family, if I'm with my family or anybody, they know I'm singing along. Doesn't matter where we're at. That's one of them for sure. Another one is Like a Prayer by Madonna.
Yep.
I'm singing every lyric. I don't care where we're at. I'm singing every lyric. It doesn't matter if we're at Target, if we're at a restaurant. Everyone's hearing it. I don't care. But so Ella, our youngest, she did a musical showcase recently. She was performing at a little bistro, and she didn't tell us which song she was going to do. And so she gets up there, and her first song, she goes, "This one's for my dad because he loves this song so much." And she sings A Million Reasons.
Oh, that's awesome. Were you bawling?
Oh, of course. I'm just like
so good.
I'm proudly weeping. I was just like, oh, that was amazing. Yeah. Give me some of yours. I'm gonna scroll down and find ones that are actually mine.
Here are my top 10. Sweet Jane, Cowboy Junkies is number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Then Public Image, that's on the Basquiat soundtrack. Their song from Public Image Limited, which is Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols.
Mm-hmm.
Remnant in Pictures, Mimicking Birds. It's a cry song. Oh Sweet Nothing by Velvet Underground. All My Friends by LCD Sound System. Medicine by Daughter. That song destroys me. I Am Piano by Peter Broderick. That's a sing-along for me.
Mm-hmm.
Rock and Roll by Velvet Underground. Feel the Pain, Dinosaur Jr., and then The Exploding Boy by The Cure, which is my theme song, my personal theme song, and one of my favorite walking songs. Because I have a soundtrack. I have a walking soundtrack for when I get off a plane at the airport.
You've got a soundtrack for everything. You give off main character vibes no matter where you're at.
I have to have a soundtrack when I'm going places. I put on my walking. It's for when I'm walking places.
That's funny. I'll round out my list here. So Still on Fire by Trenton Moeller, who's an electronic producer. Amazing. Fruit Bats are another one of my most listened to albums. You don't know the Fruit Bats?
No, I know the Fruit Bats, yeah.
Gullwing Doors is probably my favorite Fruit Bats song for sure. Then we get into some hip hop. I got some Kendrick in here. You're probably more of a Drake guy, I would imagine.
Definitely not.
And then like a bunch of national songs after that. It gets pretty. They are with a bullet, my number one. Yeah, Finder by Moderat. Moderat's another electronic producer that
Thom
I
Yorke's got some great songs with
love.
him.
Yeah, Yeah. And then a bunch of LCD Sound System as well. I'm wearing my LCD Sound System shirt today. They're coming back to town
Got
here
my Ziggy
in a couple months.
Stardust shirt on today.
Heck yeah. All right. So speaking of soundtracks, let's get into, so one of the things I want to talk about that I think does relate to art a little bit is I think just the value of understanding what we need, from an energetic standpoint at different phases in the studio, right? So there's different maybe moods that we're trying to tap into, or just a level of energy. And so I created some different, sort of subcategories. We've talked about a bunch of these already, but I think one of my categories is sort of my get after it, sort of be bold. So for me, I love hip hop. I mentioned Kendrick already. Prof is another one of my guys. He's a Minneapolis rapper that I love. And then, getting back into some old school, 90s stuff with Wu-Tang and Tribe, obviously, and some of those. But those would be kind of in my, like, be bold, get after it. Like, hey, I need some juice, And then I still love electronic music. So I listen to a lot of mixes as well. So Carl Cox is probably my number one favorite DJ and producer. And another guy that's a little bit newer, Frankie Wah, is an English producer and DJ that I absolutely dig as well. So I really enjoy listening to continuous mixes, and that would kind of go into the sort of the flow category. That's also what I love about jazz. I guess I'm covering two categories at once here, but like I think there's something to be said for times in the studio where I definitely want to tap into the feels, but there's others where I just want a more sort of consistent level energy. As opposed to, I think some music affects us so deeply emotionally. I personally can't go there and stay there for, 7 hours straight. Right.
Yeah.
And so part of it is, I guess I'm touching on a bunch of different things here, and then I'll just let you pick up wherever you feel led. But it's being aware of, okay, what am I trying to communicate with the work, and what music taps me into that particular vibe or feeling or energy. And then it's also having something ready, to know like, all right, this is where I want to be. This is what I need energetically in this moment, and then tapping into that.
Yeah. I mean, I spend maybe as much time researching music and finding music as I do making art in the studio, to be honest, because it's my muse, and so there's really nothing held back for me music wise, like all tastes, all styles. And I'm always constantly searching. I mean, I did this way back in the day, even when, I don't know if you ever used All Music, was kind of an online system of bands that sound like bands and genres and finding new music. So what I would do, this is when the iPod first came out, and I had burned all my CDs and I put them all on my iPod. Right. And then you're like, oh, you can actually use this thing called iTunes and put music on there. But then Napster came out, and then I was just burning stuff like crazy and stealing music, like wildfire, and making albums. But I would go to All Music, and I'd type in the Smiths, and then I'd find all the bands that were influenced by the Smiths, sounded like the Smiths. I would just journal all these bands' names, and I'd go find them and listen and figure it out. So I do that today with Spotify. Same thing, right? And so I'm constantly discovering music, but I create playlists all the time for emotions, or I create a playlist where every body of work I do has a specific playlist to it. And so I'm working through that the whole time, and it's different. Some are classical, some are jazz, some are older music, some are newer music, some are punk, some are, new wave or whatever. It's all over the place, but there's an importance there for me. And honestly, it's really weird because this year I've been painting more in silence than I have to music in the past. And so I may be creating the playlist and listening to it while I'm working on other stuff, but then when I'm working, I've all of a sudden settled into this moment of silence. So the music's still inspiring me, because while I'm setting up or getting ready or making notes on what I want to work on or my ideas, I'm listening to music and I'm creating music to go with it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I'm making art. It's just what is fitting in the moment for some reason, but I just needed silence. I just needed some silence this year.
It's funny you say that. I think I've been doing that a lot more lately as well. And we haven't talked about it off air or anything like that, but that's something that there's, when we talk about listening to the work doesn't necessarily speak to us audibly very often, but there's a lot of value in not having any other inputs. right?
Yeah.
To be open to receiving and having those conversations with the work, or having conversations with yourself, which I do a ton. I talked about this in a couple episodes ago, but I found that to be a super valuable exercise where I'm just talking to myself out loud. I noticed this a few years back when my oldest was doing some studio assistant work for me a few hours a week here and there, and I would just be talking through with her my next steps on all these different pieces, none of which was she going to do. Ultimately, it led back to, hey, if you could sweep the back and organize these materials. But she's like, hey, she actually asked me, is it helpful for you to just, like, talk to me about all these things? Do you need me to say anything, or you want to write them down? I'm like, no, actually, I guess I just needed to hear myself say it out loud. So being an external processor, working in silence and just talking to myself out loud about the work, because I found that my internal dialogue is much more negative by default, unless I'm intentional about it, but it's much less so when I'm saying it out loud. It's much more sort of, productive and useful when I'm saying the things out loud, what I'm thinking about next steps, for any given piece. So silence is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful tool for that. I also listen to a lot of binaural beats. I've got an app called brain.fm that has a bunch of different
frequencies, and
on top of different sort of just chill, relaxed, different beats and music and things like that. But I really love that because I think I found out about this initially quite a while ago when I was trying to find different ways to deal with my, ADHD and inherent inability to focus on any task for any amount of time, apart from the ones that I want to hyper focus on. But I find that to be very, very useful as well, to kind of get into an easy flow. And if I need to sort of like pull myself in and, get my version of focus, It's funny you're talking about Napster though. So LimeWire was what I used the most. And when I realized, and at this point when LimeWire came out, I had retired from shoplifting physical music, but I was like, oh, I can just steal music from my house, and boy, that became a whole obsession of just like, how much of this can I
know
collect and just input.
I was ashamed and not ashamed all in the same.
Know.
I had two really good buddies. They're actually my best friend's little brother and his buddy, or two of my best friends too. FBI showed up at their door.
No way.
Knocked because they were downloading software as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And reselling. So they basically had FBI show up and said, "Give me your stuff."
No kidding.
Yeah. And that was, you're like, oh, maybe I can get in trouble for this.
I felt really bad about it, but not bad enough to stop doing.
Yeah. Well, I still bought albums. I still went to concerts. I still bought the gear. Yeah. That's how I justify it. As you were talking about that, like Bach has always been that for me. Bach's cello suites have always been one of those go-tos for me when I just really need that complete focus, complete everything evaporate. And it's just always been a go-to to just throw that on. Or Vivaldi. There's certain classical artists that have kind of jazz. We've talked about jazz quite a bit, has been that for me as well. But Bach's cello suites have always been a very centering thing for me that just kind of refocuses me and gets me back on track at times.
All right, Ty. So before we wrap up, I got to share this with you. This just came in the mail yesterday. And so I'm excited for those of you watching on YouTube, this is the album cover. This is the second album cover.
I was going to say that's the second.
So the artist, his name is Chaos Log, and his label is Erratic Patterns. So they're out of Berlin. It's Melt Your Face Off techno. But just the feeling of, seeing my artwork on an album. This is the first time they used my work was a couple years ago, something like that. That one already hangs on my wall, and this one will as well. But it's so cool to see, artwork by Nathan Terborg. I mean, it's just so
pretty
cool,
great,
because, you just think about all back to the experiences of album artwork. And we talked about this, I think maybe it was offline. Maybe it was during our episode. I can't remember when we stopped recording and when we didn't, but just like, the experience of reading the lyrics and looking at all the album artwork and how the visuals connected to the music itself was just incredible. Like I still, Nine Inch Nails is one of my, another one of my top, 10, 20 bands I listen to still. The album artwork, photographs.
It's influential in your work. Yeah.
it stuck with me in a big way. So yeah, so to see my work on an album is super, super cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talking about like that. So my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, my niece and nephew were here over Memorial Day weekend here in the States. And we were sitting at the table, my nephew and my brother-in-law Lamar and we were hanging out, and I was like, oh, you got to see these albums that my buddy Jeremy got me for my 50th birthday that he just brought me a year and a half later.
Yeah.
And so it was Smashing Pumpkins' greatest hits, like 2 record album. These are records, vinyl, by the way. And I don't know how he remembered that I love the band Bad Brains, the punk band. And it's a 2 album live in Washington, D.C. on vinyl, Bad Brains. And so I put Bad Brains on for my nephew and my brother-in-law. And I was like, can you tell anything different about these guys? Because most people won't know that they're African-American. Like there's not many black punk bands that exist. There are plenty of bands that have had like a guitar player or a drummer, you know, a band like Turnstile today that's massive that I love. And, you know, you've got like the Vernon Reeds, like the guitar, Living Color, like rock bands and things. And there's a few and far between, but like literal freaking hardcore punk band that just shreds, that people skate to, like, and then I opened up the album and they were like, what? That's amazing. You know what I mean? It's like those things to me are just incredible. Like to be able, and then, so then my nephew's like looking through and looking at all the pictures and look, you know, checking, but it's so much physicalness involved in that to me just adds even more luster, story, legend than play. Look how many plays that has. I must be a good song. There's no like figuring it out, you know, like, I don't know. I can complain all day about things I miss because I also embrace the new in major ways. So,
Well, speaking of album art, I think that's one thing that, you know, there's some musicians, some musical artists that have maintained a consistent aesthetic throughout their career, many of whom have worked with the exact same designer or artist for all of their albums, right? So like I think Nine Inch Nails is one of those. Tool has got a very specific aesthetic. I think they worked with the same artist, you know, the entire time. I'm trying to think of who. Radiohead, of course, absolutely. There's many others, but you know, there's something else to be said for how the visual has evolved and continues to, but still sort of on brand, you know, for their look, you know?
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, let's wrap up, Ty.
Yeah,
This has been fun. Again, as we say a lot, this has been fun for us. Hopefully it's been fun for the handful of you that made it to the end of this episode. But I think if we were to put this in any version of a tactical tip, it would just be in tune to how your entire practice affects you, but specifically with all of your inputs. You know, we've spoken about music specifically today, but how everything that you're consuming affects your work, the way you work, the energy you bring into your work, the emotions, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to communicate with what it is that you're making, and be intentional about it. You know, pay attention to how things affect you and be proactive about setting, or in some cases, if you're like us, having to shift or, you know, change the mood that you're in to accomplish what you're attempting to accomplish during that particular, you know, session in the studio or whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Well, and for us, like this episode is really a reflection of how you and I also kind of search for things and ideas to kind of drive where we could go with our work, right? We're always on the hunt, artists as kind of mental collectors, so that we have ideas to create work from. So whatever it is for you, I mean, it could be anything, but for us, music is a very big part of that. So, and we're always paying attention, can take you back. If you're searching for something to make work on, you always have memory. And for me, what's the one thing that drives memory more than anything else? It's music. So it's just being attuned, like Nathan said, and always trying to find, like, what are things that I could build work upon? How do I find them and how do I locate them? Just keep your mind always going and write those things down so you don't forget.
Yeah. Love it.
That's all I got. I'm gonna go listen to some
music.
That's all I got
as well. Me too. I'm gonna listen to Grace today. I'm gonna listen to Mr. Buckley.
Love it.
I'm gonna listen to that start to finish.
I'm gonna listen to the new Broken Social Scene again because it's phenomenal.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's so
okay.
Good. So good. Yeah.
All right, that'll be next up.
Awesome.
Well, listen, thank you for joining us for today's episode of
Just Make Music.
Just make stuff. Just make. Keep it at that.
See you guys.
Bye.